On this episode, we kick off our parenting series with internationally known speaker and author, Dr. Emerson Eggerichs. Dr. Emerson authored the book Mother and Son, The Respect Effect, and he says this book will help mothers see what every mom needs to recognize in her son. All that and much, much more on this episode of the Healing Place Marriage and Family Podcast.
Welcome to Healing Place Marriage and Family Podcast, where families are equipped to reflect God's redeeming love. And now here are your hosts, Michael Campagna and Jared Lambert.
All right, welcome to the Healing Place Marriage and Family Podcast, and thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. I'm your co-host, Jared Lambert, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Michael Campagna. Well, last week we spoke with Dr. Emerson Eggerichs about his best-selling book, Love and Respect. If you haven't had a chance to check out that episode yet, we really recommend going back and listening to it. Has some really great information that could transform every aspect of your marriage when it comes to love and respect. Well, we're happy to have Dr. Emerson to join us again for this episode as we kick off our parenting series. Today we're going to talk with Dr. Eggerichs about his book, Mother and Son, The Respect Effect. In the future, some of the things you can look forward to in upcoming episodes. We're going to talk about fatherhood, parenting, children, adolescents in a technology-rich world. We're going to be talking about parenting in blended families. We're going to be talking about divorce care for kids and a bunch of other great topics that we have in the works. Well, but today we're starting off with mothers and sons. So, Michael, tell us a little bit about today's guest.
Dr. Emerson Eggerichs is an internationally known public speaker on the topic of male-female relationships. Based on over 3 decades of counseling, as well as scientific and biblical research, Dr. Eggerichs and his wife Sarah developed the Love and Respect Conference, which they present to live audiences around the country. Dr. Eggerichs has authored several books, including the national bestseller Love and Respect, which is a Platinum and Book of the Year award winner, selling over 1.6 million copies. We talked about love and respect on our previous episode with Dr. Eggerichs, but today we want to talk about his latest book, Mother and Son, which was released in April 2016. Dr. Eggerichs, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey.
Thank you so much for taking your time to share with us today.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Jared.
All right, Doc. So you said in this book, this book is going to help mothers see what every mom needs to recognize in her son. So tell us a little bit more about that. Why exactly did you write Mother and Son, The Respect Effect?
Well, over the years, we've done the Love and Respect marriage conferences where we unpack Ephesians 5:33, which commands the husband to love and the wife to respect. And when we talk about respecting a husband, there is a pushback on that, and from some, because there's a fear that we're suggesting that a woman needs to respect bad behavior or that she needs to acquiesce to whatever the husband wants because that wouldn't be respectful if she didn't. So there is this misunderstanding. It's an honest misunderstanding initially, but once we communicate that a husband has a need to feel respected for who he is as a person, created in God's image, apart from his performance. We don't respect bad behavior. We respectfully confront the bad behavior. Plus, we point out that when a woman is upset, she appears disrespectful, even though she's not meaning to be, and so she's misinterpreted, and so we begin to unpack this, and light bulbs begin to come on because it actually empowers a wife to energize her husband. Men soften and they move toward her to connect, and this is her deepest value. Instead of him exiting or withdrawing, he stays engaged as he senses that she's not using this topic as another opportunity to send him a message she doesn't respect who he is as a human being. Well,
I was just going to say, that's how it works between husbands and wives, but in your new book, you're talking about how the same principle applies to mothers and their sons.
Exactly. And that the mothers went home and applied it to their boys and began to realize, whoa, the man is in the boy. And they began to see this boy softening, connecting, being more expressive, not reacting, not shutting down as much. And it's not a formula. It's not something that's going to make the boy walk on water. But the negativity that she experiences will lessen. There'll be more positive times because it's meeting a need. Particularly when a mother's upset, the boy, like the father, begins to think, Mom is just using this topic as an opportunity to send me a message that she doesn't like who I am, she doesn't respect who I am, and so he filters it through a whole different grid. And so the book was written in part because mothers were writing me saying, Dr. Eggerichs, this has revolutionized my relationship with my son.
Did you anticipate that when you wrote the first book, that this would apply to mothers and sons and not just women and men?
Well, in a sense, because Jesus said, have you not read, he who made them from the beginning made them male and female. So in that sense, it's not really a husband-wife issue as much as it is a male and female situation. And Sarah, my own wife, put me onto this early on because we have what we call that mantra where a wife says, I don't feel any respect for my husband. It would be hypocritical for me to show him respect when I don't feel it. He's not superior to me. I'm not inferior to him. He hasn't earned the respect. He doesn't deserve the respect. I'm not going to give him license to do what he wants to do. I'm not going to lose a sense of self or identity. I'm not going to return to male patriarchy and fear male dominance. I'm not going to subject myself to emotional abuse. But other than these things, Dr. Emerson, I'm really open to hearing what you have to say about it.
Wow.
And so
a lot of exceptions.
Well, that's right. That's what women feel. And they're not mean-spirited. They're afraid that we're going to make them into doormats. But then I asked the question, how many of you have sons? And Sarah, my wife, is the one that said, you need to ask this question early on. So I have everybody raise their hand who have sons. How many women have sons? And of course, almost everybody does. And I said, that attitude that I just expressed in that mantra is the attitude your sweet daughter-in-law, who's not going to have a mean bone in her body, that's going to be her attitude toward her boy. And it's like you can hear the gasps. It's like they have one feeling about their husband, but they are going to defend that boy. They don't want that daughter-in-law to treat their boy with that kind of contempt. And so they went home and began to realize, you know what? I think I'm innocently reacting to my boys in ways that feel disrespectful to them. And so one of the points we make is you just simply say when you're upset with them, and you don't have to become robotic or mechanical, just say, I'm spitting mad at you right now, and what you just did is unacceptable. How do I say this in a way that you don't think I'm trying to diss you? I am so mad right now, but how do I say this without you think I'm just trying to put you down? In fact, I think I respect you more than you respect yourself based on what you did. I think we need to take a 5-minute break so I can cool down and we can address this respectfully. Well, there are some boys who have never heard mother speak that way. They'll almost start grinning. They'll think, this is wonderful. And he will suddenly, the response that the mothers, are expressing is different night and day. And here's an illustration that I give that's very important. A mother can have a teenage daughter, 13, and a teenage boy who's, let's say, the twin. And Tuesday night, she is spitting mad at the girl, right? She vents at that girl, and they just come at each other. And then half hour later, they're sitting on the bed, legs crossed, and they're venting with each other. And then the one said, well, I'm sorry, Mom, I shouldn't have said that. And the mom said, well, I'm sorry, honey, I was really out of line. Will you forgive me? I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that. And then they'll say, well, of course I do forgive you, Mom. They'll hug and tear up a little bit, and they'll tell a joke, and they're good to go, right? Okay, yeah. The next night, that teen boy, same situation. Maybe he does now the same thing that his sister did the day before. The mother vents at him in the same way, comes at him exactly the same way. The boy shuts down, withdraws, and doesn't talk. Okay, why? Because he's filtering it through blue. She, the girl, instinctively knows what mother's doing. Women get women, just as men get men. And so there is this gender empathy that we have. But what happens, the mother is feeling, what's wrong with my boy? There's nothing wrong with him. He filters it through the respect grid. Brain research has been done by Harvard. She was trained at Harvard. She's a medical doctor. That girls in teenage years go nuts when they are not liked socially. But she makes the comment, boys really kind of shut down when they're not respected. And the point that's being made is that girls filter it through being liked. They don't necessarily filter it through the respect grid, even though they need respect and boys need love. At the end of the day, boys are more hypersensitive to the feeling that you're dissing me, that you don't like who I am, that you find me unacceptable. The girl does not interpret mother's venting through that grid. And so what we have here is a misunderstanding. And so what we encourage mothers to do is to ask herself, is that which I'm about to say going to be interpreted from my son as me trying to diss him and put him down and shame him? And if so, then what she needs to do is say, I'm not doing that. And you're not going to lose power. You're actually going to increase your power because his spirit will soften and he'll actually look at you.
Wow. Do you think that it's a challenge for mothers to see their sons as men rather than just as their kid? And does that contribute to this confusion?
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the points, too, just to make a sidebar comment, mothers say, I need to be respected. Absolutely. The Bible says honor father and mother. And I wrote another book called Love and Respect in the Family. and it's 300 pages on how to show you how to teach your son and daughters to honor you. So I'm big on that. But what I have found is that many mothers are innocently reacting to boys, particularly in this culture, in a way that feels very disrespectful. And part of the challenge, to your point, I had one woman write, my son is 18, but I think I still treat him kind of like my little baby boy. And I wanted to say, you think? I mean, do you think this is going to be effective? He could go off to war and die for his country. And she said, I think I need to maybe show him a little bit more respect. Well, absolutely. But it also is something that he needs when he's 6 years old, saying, I'm proud of you or I appreciate you. One mother wrote me, and I think her son was right around 11, and she began to apply this, and she said, and here's what is an answer to a question some of the mothers who are listening are asking. I don't know what this looks like. Well, here's what it looks like. It's what I call respect talk. When my son gives me his insight, I say, I really respect what you have to say, or I respect the way you handle that situation, or I really respect how you're taking initiative to get things done and follow through with. She said, these things have made my son smile like I have never seen. She said, I talk more about respect with regard to sporting events and showing respect for other opponents. My son knows without a doubt that I love him. Now I feel he knows that I value him and his ideas, which I may not have done so well in the past. And then she says, thank you so much for sharing God's message. So the man is in the boy just as the woman is in the girl, and we coach fathers on loving their daughters and treating them lovingly, not being harsh and angry. There are certain things you can do to violate the spirit of a young girl. Well, there are certain things you can do that violates the spirit of a young boy. And one simple definition is it's a positive regard toward the spirit of your son, a positive regard toward the spirit of your son, even though you're spitting mad. Remember when Jesus, the disciples, 3 of them, Peter, James, and John, fell asleep in the garden, he said, your spirit's willing, but your flesh is weak. Your spirit's willing, but your flesh is weak. He did not show contempt toward their spirit, even though he disapproved of their fleshy reaction. And that's what a mother can do and should do. You show a positive regard toward the spirit of your son while you're confronting and rebuking bad behavior. Distinguish him from his behavior. What you did is not respectable, but I respect who you are and who God's made you to be and who you're becoming, but I don't respect what you've done. That's how you distinguish it.
It's almost like you're appealing, or you have to appeal to their future selves. Like, I see the man that you will be, but what you just did doesn't reflect that.
That's respect talk. That's
you're
exactly
speaking,
right.
You're speaking to their potential, and you're calling out the potential God's placed in them rather than simply addressing how they made you feel right now, how their behavior affected you personally. Exactly. It's how their behavior could affect who God has created them to be, ultimately.
All great leaders of men do that. They appeal to the man that they believe that man to be. They see the future. They don't shame him because of the past. They'll rebuke him for the past, but they don't shame him. They don't say, you're a horrible, rotten person because of what you've done. You say, what you've done is unbecoming. It's not in keeping with who I believe you to be. It's just a very subtle way of changing your vocabulary, but it actually reflects what every mother believes. And if a mother misrepresents herself when she's confronting her son, her boy is going to misinterpret her.
Wow.
Now, Dr. Emerson, in your book, Mother and Son, The Respect Effect, you referred to research from another author, Shaunti Feldhahn, who authored the book For Women Only. Tell us about her research and how that research impacted the message in your book.
Yeah, Shaunti, she's done a superb job in the area of research, and another graduate of Graduate School of Harvard, and she random sampled 400 American men. It was done by a decision analyst out of Houston, a secular evaluation of the secular American male, and they ran it again because they were so blown away by all the findings. But one of the questions that she asked was this: would you men, the American male, would you rather be left alone and unloved in the world, or be viewed as inadequate and disrespected by everyone? And almost 75%, 3/4 of the men said they'd rather be left alone and unloved in the world. And what we're up against, Michael and Jared, is the belief that when a man needs respect, it's rooted in his ego, his narcissistic tendencies. There is this profiling of the male through the female eyes because she couldn't imagine having this kind of reaction. So she labels it as egotistical, as very self-centered. But yet men serve and die for honor. They give their very lives for this. That's not narcissistic. Men sacrifice themselves literally because of issues of honor. So what we have to do is allow men to give voice to what men feel. Are there exceptions to it? Yeah, there are narcissistic men, just as there are prima donna women who all want to be center stage and are drama queens. But we don't label all women that way because of these peripheralist situations. But we've kind of taken the peripheral male and made that the representation of the male. And what we have to do is back off of this. And so when you find research like that, where the men are feeling very insecure and vulnerable, when you view them as inadequate, and you don't respect them. So if you say to your son, you're not adequate as a human being, and I don't respect who you are right now, and you're doing that to motivate him to be more loving, you'll completely close him off. It will not work. It simply will not work any more than a father can be harsh and angry with his daughter and think, well, it's very effective because she shuts up.
Yeah, that's not the goal. Would you say that our culture has contributed to an environment where this concept of male honor and doing things out of a sense of honor, that's not quite as prominent or even accepted as maybe it used to be? Have we neutered our sons with the way that we are culturally?
Yes. I mean, the short answer is yes. The intellectual community is filled with a lot of good-willed people. They're extremely intelligent, and they're full of goodwill, and they're better people than I am and smarter than I am, but they're evolutionists, and they believe we've evolved and that women are now more advanced and that men need to catch up with it. And if men are not more feminine in their response, we will try to socialize the young boy to be more feminine. We will use medication to make him more feminine. We'll use legal recourse to make them more less than whatever we want them to be. And no one's mean-spirited about that. There is a true belief that we are evolving, and this is the way you're going to bring about the transformation. I'm a Christ follower. And I believe what Christ said, that God made us male and female. And because of that, we need to then work with God's design. And I know, and this is what's so exciting, when a mother hears me and applies what I'm saying and doesn't see it as a theory, but sees it as a meeting of your son's need, it works, and it works dramatically. And so what I encourage mothers to do is to do this and do it faithfully. And he's not going to, respond perfectly any more than you're going to do these things perfectly. But I believe God designed this boy to respond to issues of honor. And I always say, follow the money based on what Hollywood is doing. They know these things like the back of their hand. They know exactly if they do the Gladiator movie, if they do Saving Private Ryan. You look at the movie industry and they know this stuff. They know it, and they are going to the bank grinning because they understand that these things are there as a result of something that's innate. Just as little girls, there are almost 400% more chemicals are flooded over her body in the womb. It has nothing to do with socialization or environment. It's clearly genetic. And when she comes out of the womb, that's why eye-to-eye contact, that sensitivity to the face, sensitivity to emotions, why when women talk with each other, they look at each other, they don't look away. There are so many things that are there inherently that has nothing to do with socialization. And if we don't get in tune with these, then we are going to be seeking to be politically correct, but we won't be effective with the very people that we would die for, that we care deeply for. So my appeal is, do this and watch what happens. Your boy is going to respond. Don't make him into a woman, but the key to motivating him to be more loving is by meeting that need to feel honored for who he is. And when you honor a man, he serves and loves and dies.
Wow.
All right, once again, we're sitting with Dr. Emerson Eggerichs, author of the book Mother and Son, The Respect Effect. It's very encouraging. You have a lot of testimonies in this book, and it's encouraging when we hear other people's story about applying these things and how it's working out for them. So that's one of the things we like about the book. As we wrap up here, give us a little highlight about some of the meat of the book. You provide mothers with some tools to help understand the desires of sons, and you use the CHAIRS acronym. Not giving away too much of the book, but at a high level, can you just touch and give us the highlights on those 6 desires that sons have?
Right. There are a couple thoughts. One, I had the privilege of studying the Bible 30 hours a week for nearly 20 years as a senior pastor in a college town. And then I've got my PhD in family studies. And so I see things in research academically, but I also see things in Scripture. And I looked there's two acronyms, GUIDES, GUIDES, which represents giving, understanding, instructing, disciplining, encouraging, and supplicating. And I looked at all the passages in the Bible to parents about parenting, not just taking a principle that might apply, but what did God say to parents about parenting? And that's the GUIDES acronym. And then I looked at every passage that makes reference to gender's specificities. For instance, act like men, be strong. Or on the female side, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way since she is a woman. There are these gender passages, and I pulled them all together, and the CHAIRS acronym that you referenced is what God has revealed about the male spirit, masculinity, and how men function. And for instance, Adam was created in the garden. He was created to cultivate and maintain the garden before Eve was even created. So in paradise, in a perfect world, God designed Adam to cultivate and maintain the garden, to work. And I always ask the question, Michael and Jared, what's the first question every man asks another man when they meet for the first time?
What do you do for a living?
What do you do? What do you do? It's inherent within us. Women will talk about marriage, maybe relationships. They are more focused on the family. It doesn't mean that there isn't crossover. Women will ask, what do you do? And guys will ask about the family. But generally speaking, the number one question is, what do you do? And that's because God designed the male to work in the field to provide for his family. This is within the boy. And so we begin to unpack, how do you speak into that respect talk? How do you honor that? Because you'll see it beginning to surface. And what we did is we looked at ages and stages of boys across it. This applies to a 4-year-old and to a 40-year-old, and it can be even more effective with an adult son. It's never too late, and boy is never too old, as my wife says. But then we look at these acronyms, and we create hundreds of examples, because mothers have said to me, I need an example. Some mothers, they go right to where the age of their boy is and the felt need that they're experiencing with him. So we've tried to provide that. That's the upside. The downside is it's like there are hundreds of examples, so I don't want mothers to be overwhelmed, because suddenly they can start reading this and feeling like I failed. It's crucial that no mother move into shame. She's got to relax on this. It's okay. Your love is going to carry the day. But what we're saying is add to your love vocabulary some respect talk, and you'll just see a tremendous difference there.
Wow. Well, Dr. Eggerichs, once again, we thank you so much for taking time to share your wisdom and your insight with our listeners. If any of them want to follow up with any additional resources or just be in touch with your organization, how would they do that online?
It's called loveandrespect.com, loveandrespect.com. And we have our Facebook. We have over 2 million following us on Facebook. My son, Jonathan, is a clinical psychologist. We have a father-son podcast now. In the last probably year and a half, we've had 1.2 million downloads. And then they can get the mother-son book on our website. We have all these resources that we're giving away free, but they can purchase the mother-son book there. And we just have a lot of exciting things. The Love and Respect book itself, and just encourage them to go and check it out.
Wonderful. Well, folks, I think it's going to wrap it up for us today. Thank you once again for listening to the Healing Place Marriage and Family Podcast. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us for today's podcast. For more information about Healing Place Church, visit us online at healingplacechurch.org. To stay informed of upcoming events, check us out on Facebook. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share this podcast with your family and your friends.